quite astonishing that DeSantis has been able to establish himself as so clearly the number two in the Republican Party, and so clearly Trump's most formidable intra-party rival that he's had. That it is quite telling that something, quite striking that something may be going on. And I do think, people are like, 2016. I'm somebody who thought Trump would win the primary way back, July 2015. This is a much different environment. Things have changed. The world's gotten a lot worse in a lot of ways, gotten a lot better in some ways. But the COVID experience, the summer of love in 2020, all of that's very, very much the way the world is refracted now. And none of that had happened in 15 or 16. And I think DeSantis, to more concretely answer your question, has really established a very interesting counter model in Florida, a mega state, with what is essentially a conservative mega state city, Miami. But that's going to come off as very charismatic. He's also substantially younger than Trump. And, I think even Trump's, biggest fans, if you get a whiskey in them, would say, well, about that execution thing, a lot of the stuff he wanted to do for his term, he was probably imperfect. So there's a sense of Trump, of DeSantis having, perhaps more prodigious executive abilities.
Okay, so this is what I'm hearing. This is sort of how I work it through in my own head, which is when Trump ran in 2016, he was really the only person offering the non-globalist Wall Street Journal Republican vision. He was the only product on the entire show.
Cruz gesticulated towards it, but I think it wasn't real, and I don't think Cruz actually believes that crap. We would not have seemed to change Republican politics on trade, for instance, or even a lot of the foreign policy stuff, without Donald Trump as the president. I just don't believe it. Like that, he was the individual that ushered in that paradigm shift.
So then I view DeSantis is, if Trump was an emotional response, DeSantis feels like the intellectual response. Like he's strategic and understands how to wield power. And as you said, I liked your term, a more prodigious executive. But he is now an alternative to Trump to perhaps accomplish the same means, but with a higher level of skill or something. If I was writing a Lego guide or something to build a candidate.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's worth noting that a lot of early Trump adopters hate DeSantis. Seem to be very much sticking by their man, Mr. Trump. But I think there is a lot of people who liked the direction that Trump took the Republican Party, and I think something that I will suspect will become a major building block of any sort of DeSantis presidential campaign, especially if it's against Trump, is that, and I think this is sort of forgotten right now, which was the point I was going to make earlier. The irony of COVID double dipping, i.e., that it went past 2020 into 2021 and maybe now into 2022.
Right.
The irony of it double dipping, and the irony of how fanatical the sort of center left wing COVID response was. People, it's not like the government was telling people like the mask. It's crazy. The irony of that is that all became sort of associated with Biden in the left.
Yeah.
But in a Republican Party primary, it's going to be dredged up if DeSantis is smart, and I do think he is. Who was the president when we locked down? Donald Trump. Who was the president when the cities burned? Donald Trump. And so, I think if DeSantis wants to take him out, he has to litigate that ad nauseum and say, I would never have locked down. I was skeptical of it in late March 2020. And, I also would have sent in the troops or something to that effect. And we'll see if he does it. I mean, it's possible that he doesn't do it. But I think I think the Trump criticism of DeSantis is that DeSantis was essentially a Bush Republican circa 2016. And that may be true.
Right.
But I think things have changed. DeSantis is a consummate party man. And I think in 2020, on the issues du jour, whether it be you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, clear excesses, whether it be the trans movement, extreme excesses, whether it be the COVID lunacy. DeSantis has distinguished himself as a executive that could actually brush back that stuff in potentially a more coherent fashion than a second Trump administration would. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Trump's going to go on stage with him. He's going to just dunk on him. And actually, DeSantis is not going to hold up. But I suspect the Trump as incompetent argument is something that the former president is going to have to respond to pretty forcefully.
So you're making 2 points here that have very important assumptions in them that I don't want to put words in your mouth because you're sort of properly hedging too. But I want to like talk about that for a second, which is there like the debate that's on every dumb Politico newsletter is whether or not Republicans will clear the field for Donald Trump or not. So like I'm asking myself,
now, that's not happening. That seems like that's what's changed in the last 90 days.
Yeah.
Like it's not happening. And now the problem is this could like rebound where ironically, because Trump's stock is seen as down by the smart set, that 17 Republicans will run, and then it will be a 2016 redux if Trump is not in handcuffs, right?
Right.
And so, because what's occurred, and I think potentially helping Trump's stock and keeping DeSantis from going further potentially is that it's not just Trump. It's not just DeSantis. Like Pence, Youngkin, Pompeo, Haley, Liz Cheney was not a no this morning on Meet the Press when I watched it. I mean, Larry Hogan, I just don't think he's a bright human being. Apparently, he's being told that he could run. I think who knows? Yeah. So there's an interpretation of Trump as weak, which ironically could go to Trump as strong. But it's very fluid. And let's say only half of those guys run. But yeah, I think we're getting close to an open field.